Hello students, this is Mohini Miss from Teresa school. So in my last class I had done up till what is deindustrialization for short notes, for short question. So now in this class I will deal with the other important questions, and the first important question is write about the land revenue system in system of the British East India Company. So now I will deal with the various land revenue systems in India. So Robert Clive and his successors, they failed to start a permanent system of land revenue in Bengal. Then after that, Warren Hastings also made a lot of experiments, and he also could not devise a permanent one. He introduced this system known as the Ijadari system, and in this Ijadari system the land was auctioned. Land was auctioned. It was, you know what is auction? It was nilami. So land was auctioned and it was given to the highest bidder. Whoever agreed to pay the highest amount, land was given to him, and this was given for 5 years. So this system came to be known as the Ijadari system. But this Ijadari system failed, and the reason why it failed is because it did not benefit the British government, nor did it benefit the peasants, so it failed. And this Ijadari system was introduced by Warren Hastings in 1772. Then, after many years, again he introduced, in 1777, he introduced another land revenue system, and it was called OneYear Settlement. That means for 1 year land was given, and here there was no auction, but it was given, land was given to the traditional zamindars, especially zamindars who had, interest in the land, who had some connection with the land, who belonged to the Zamindari family, especially land was given to them. But this 1 year settlement also could not work out. So now the British Parliament in England decided to, send Lord Cornwallis to India to start the permanent settlement. So he was sent to India, and he was the person who belonged to the Zamindari family. He had some knowledge about the land revenue settlement, so he was sent to India, and he came and he introduced permanent settlement in Bengal, Bihar and Orissa in the year 1793. And the main purpose of the British in order to start this, the land revenue settlement was to ensure the steady flow of the revenue into the treasury of the East India Company. And it was not to modernize India or not to benefit the Indians, but for the safe or the steady flow of the revenue into the treasury of the East India Company. The revenue settlements were introduced, and now this permanent settlement was also known as the Zamindari Settlement, because the settlement was made with the Zamindar. And so the Zamindar became the permanent owners, and they got the hereditary rights. That means if the father is a Zamindar, the son will also become a Zamindar, and they had the right to sell the land. And not only they had the right to sell the land, but the amount was fixed, and the amount had to be paid on a certain date, specified date. They had to pay the tax before sunset, and since the tax had to be paid before sunset on that specified date, so it was known as the sunset law. And the zamindar had to pay the tax, but if they failed to pay, then the land was taken away from him and it was auctioned. So this is about the provision of the permanent settlement. Now this permanent settlement had many demerits, and the first demerit is that the amount was fixed. So the amount fixed was assessed at a very high rate. So Zamindars could not pay such a high rate, so they could not pay the tax. That is number one. Then another point is that now the tax was very high, so they could not pay the tax, so they were removed from the land, and a new zamindar was chosen, or the land was given to a new zamindar. And these zamindars, mostly these new zamindars, were known as absentee landlords. The reason why were they called absentee landlords is because they used to buy the land because they had money, but they had no interest in the land. So what they used to do in the village, they used to appoint a middleman to look after the land, and most of the time they used to be out in the towns enjoying themselves, and they used to be absent from the land, so that they were known as the absentee zamindars. And these new zamindars, they used to force the peasants to pay a huge amount of tax. So the condition of the peasants became miserable. They suffered a lot. So these are the demerits of the permanent settlement. But there are two merits of the permanent settlement, and the first merit is that now the British knew about the income, how much they are going to get, how much money they are going to get. So now they could plan their budget. They could plan how much they will earn and how much they can spend, expenditure. So that is known as the budget. They could plan the income as well as the expenditure. And another is that now the British, they could devote this energy to do trade, to do business, and to follow the policy of territorial expansion. So this is about the permanent settlement. Then the British realized that there were a lot of demerits in the permanent settlement, but in spite of that, they were facing a lot of difficulties. So in spite of that, they introduced other types of land revenue settlements, similar type of land revenue settlements in different parts of India. So they introduced this Royatwari settlement in south of India. South of India, Royatwari settlement was introduced, and it was called Royatwari. Why? Because the peasants had to pay the tax directly to the British government, and the peasants are also known as Royats. So that is why it is known as the Royatwari settlement, and it was introduced by Thomas Munro in 1820 in South India. And so the peasants had to pay the tax directly to the British government. They paid the tax according to the produce, according to the quantity of crops that they produced. And another point is that it was assessed after every 20 or 30 years. So these are the provisions of the Royatwari settlement. And this Royatwari settlement was introduced as an improvement upon the permanent settlement, but it had some demerit and it failed. And the demerits are that it was said that the Royats would be given ownership on land, and this never happened. The Royats never owned any land. That is one thing. And another is that another point is that this Royats, they realized that the British officials, they had the right to enhance or to increase the tax. And the enhancement was so high that it became very difficult for them to pay the tax, and they came under the clutches or under the control of the money lenders. So this is about the Royatwari settlement. Now the next is about the Malwari settlement, and it was known as Mahal because the tax was collected from Mahal, which was also known as village. Village was known as the Mahal, so it was known as Malwari settlement, and it was introduced by Holt Mackenzie in 1822, but it was introduced in northern India. Royatwari settlement in southern India, Malwari settlement in northern India, and the tax had to be paid not by the individual landholder but by the village. And since it was paid by the village, and village was known as the Mahal, so it was known as the Malwari settlement. And at that time there was a headman who was known as a Lambardar, and this Lambardar, what they used to do is they used to sign an agreement on behalf of the people of the village, and he used to pay the tax to the British government, and the landholder used to give the tax to the British not British, but they used to give the tax to the headman according to his holding. and the officers, British officers, what they used to do is that the British officers used to consult with the headman, and they used to, after consulting, they used to assess the amount that the village had to pay, that the village had to pay, and the amount was not fixed like in the permanent settlement. So these all are the provisions of the Malwari settlement. Now there are two defects of this Malwari settlement, and the two defects are, one, as in other land revenue settlements, the peasants, they suffered, and the next is that the Lambardar or the village headman, he became so powerful that he used to occupy all the best plots of land, and he used to bring those places under his control, taking advantage of his recognized position. So these are all about the land revenue settlements that was introduced during the time of the British rule. Then the next is also about a very important question, and this is about the introduction of railways in India, or sometimes they might not say introduction of railways, they might say write about the objectives and the impacts of the introduction of railways, and for that, what you have to write, now I will discuss. So, in the middle of the 19th century, the transport and communication system of India was in a very undeveloped state. It was in a primitive stage because they used to use bullock carts, camels, horse-drawn carts were used in order to, for the transport and communication. And the British also did not care, about the modernization of transport system. But after colonization, what the British did is that they became very interested in the economic activity that involved British interest, and so they, what they did is that they led to the infrastructural development in India, and this infrastructural development led to construction of roads, construction of railways, and as a result now construction of railways started in India, and there were some objectives regarding the introduction of railways. The British had political, economic, military interest behind the introduction of railways. They did not introduce railways for the benefit of the people of India, but it was for their own benefit that they established railways. And the first objective is that now, after becoming stable in India, what the British did is that they wanted to establish administrative and political control in India. And this, they realized that to establish administrative and political control in India, this could be done only with the help of railways, because once the railways are constructed, then it is the railway which helps to take the armies. If there are any revolt anywhere in any part of India, then the armies were taken through the railways to different parts of India to stop the revolt. So that way, it was the railway that helped to in establishing the administrative and political control of the British. Then another is that the capitalists and the mill owners, they wanted cheap and easy means of transport, and this could be done only through railways. Then the next is that the Lancashire mill in London, they wanted good, clean and good quality, cotton, which only the railways could provide. And next, they wanted, safe and profitable investment of the surplus British capital. Surplus means extra capital, whatever money they had, they wanted it to be safe and they wanted profit. So that is another objective. And the last objective is that they built this railway not for the benefit of the people of India, but to to fulfill their selfish and the exploitative nature of the British rule. So these are the objectives regarding the introduction of railways. Then there was one Governor General, Lord Dalhousie, and Lord Dalhousie introduced the Minute on Railways. It is also known as a textbook on railways, because it gave the detailed study about the introduction of about the organization, about the management, about the finance of the railways. And he also introduced the recommendation of railway, which helped to establish railways in different parts of India. And there were some salient features regarding the railways, and the first salient feature was that now railways were going to be constructed from Bombay to Madras. And another is that now under the British initiative, the companies were encouraged to establish railways in India. And another is that now the companies would be given a guarantee, and it was known as the guarantee system. And what is this guarantee system? Here, whichever company was willing to establish the railway, they were given land free of cost. Then they were given 5% interest on the amount that they invested. Then another is the profit would be shared between the British government and the company. And they also said that between 25 to 50 years, they would also, the British government also, they would buy the railways if they so desired. So these were the recommendations regarding the railways. And now this recommendation were also accepted in England by the British Parliament. And now the company known as the Great Peninsula Railway were the ones who established the first passenger train. So the first passenger train started to run from Bombay to Thane from 16th and this was constructed on 16th of April 1853. So the first railway, the passenger train was also constructed. And by 1910, India became the fourth largest railway, or India had the fourth largest railway network in the whole world. So these all are about the introduction of railways. Now the last bit is about the impact of the introduction of railways. So what are the impact? What are the effects? The first impact is that now India was no longer primitive as it was before. It was no longer undeveloped as it was before. Then second is it helped in fast and easy means of transport. The next is that it helped in the railways were very cheap. Transport to railways was cheap. Even today it is cheap. We mostly travel by railways. People mostly travel by railways. It is cheap. So even those days it was cheap, and so the companies made a lot of profit. The next, it helped to fight famine, because sometimes wherever there was famine. That time the railways used to take the food to the famine-stricken area. And next is it helped in the trade and commerce. Another point, it helped in commercialization of agriculture, because now people began to grow not only for consumption, not only for their own use, but they began to grow for the market. So there was commercialization of agriculture. Next is that it helped people and encouraged people to grow cash crops like sugarcane, jute, tea, because cash crops brings a lot of money. And also next, it helps in the export and the import, because a lot of agricultural produce were exported. And last is that it helped in the investment. Now people, not only in India but even in England, people from England got interested to invest their money in India. So a lot of investment started, and this led to modernization of India. So this is all about the history regarding the introduction of railways in India. These are the two important questions I told you. Both come for 8 marks and both are very, very important for you. Then the next is about Dalhousie, Lord Dalhousie. He was an imperialist from the core of his heart, and he was the person who introduced who tried to, expand the British Empire in India through his three policies. He followed three policies. The three policies: one, that of annexation, that means through annexation or conquest. He fought wars, won the wars, and he occupied those territories and brought them under the British control. So those territories were, one is Punjab, Sikkim, Berar, all were occupied by Lord Dalhousie through the policy of annexation or through conquest and wars. The next is Doctrine of Lapse, and this comes for two marks. Doctrine of Lapse. What is Doctrine of Lapse now? So Doctrine of Lapse is a policy started by Lord Dalhousie, where it was said that if the ruler died, then if he did not have his own son, then the adopted son could not become the ruler. The kingdom would be occupied by the British. It would come under the control of the British. So that is what is known as Doctrine of Lapse, and through this Doctrine of Lapse, many territories like Jhansi, Sambalpur, Jaipur, Satara, all these places were occupied by the British. So that is Doctrine of Lapse. And there is one more policy that Lord Dalhousie followed, and that policy is called the misgovernment, policy of misgovernment. Misgovernment means when you don't rule properly. When the ruler is weak, then he cannot govern well. So on the pretext of misgovernment, he used to occupy some territories. And one example is, Awadh. In Awadh, Wajid Ali was the ruler, and he was blamed for being weak. He was blamed for not ruling over his empire properly. So his kingdom was taken away by Lord Dalhousie, and this is what is known as the policy on the grounds of misgovernment. So these are the policies that was followed by Lord Dalhousie. Then there is another imperialist, and his name is Lord Wellesley, and I told you when we did about the civil in the earlier class that Lord Wellesley, he established the Fort William College. And when was it established? It was established in 1800. Why? Because he wanted to give education to the British civilians in Indian languages and culture. That is why he built the Fort William College. And at that time, this person, Lord Wellesley, is also famous for the Subsidiary Alliance. So now what is Subsidiary Alliance? Subsidiary Alliance is, the native rulers, they agreed to sign a treaty with the British. And the British ruler, the native rulers, not the British, but the native rulers were protected. They came under the control of the British. After signing this treaty, they came under the control of the British, and the British protected them. But the British army had to be stationed, or the British army had to be kept in the native's territory, and that native ruler had to pay for the maintenance of the army. That means he had to give the salary, everything he had to give to the British army, whoever was stationed in his kingdom. So that is what is known as the Subsidiary Alliance. So this also comes sometimes for 2 marks. So all these are short. And now the last bit that I will do in this 3rd chapter, and with that I will finish the 3rd chapter, and that is the intellectual revolution. And so now how intellectual revolution started is that, especially after the French Revolution of 1789, many ideas, new ideas started to spread, not only in Europe but even in India. There was new ideas, the spread of new ideas like equality, that we are all equal, fraternity, we are all brothers, and other new ideas like Evangelist, Utilitarianism, Liberalism started to spread after the French Revolution. So now we will deal who are the Evangelists. So at that time, Charles Grant was the chief exponent. He was the chief person regarding this evangelist, and these evangelists are the missionaries, and they criticized the traditional and the superstitious belief that was prevalent in India during that time. And they said, these evangelists, they said that Christianity alone will remove the darkness. Christianity alone will dispel the darkness among the Indian people. So they gave importance to Christianity, and they were the ones who gave importance to spread of Western education. Sorry, not Western, they gave importance to spread of education. They didn't specify which education, but they gave importance to spread of education. So this is about the evangelists. Then the next is about utilitarianism, and this theory was again a new thought, the new theory, and it was started by Jeremy Bentham, and John Stuart Mill was the person who refined this utilitarian theory and this thought, and it was said, they said that human goal is, greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. That was what was their goal. They wanted to give greatest happiness to the greatest number of people. And here this theory was a moral theory where they said that action, if it is good, leads to happiness and pleasure. But they rejected action that led to harm and unhappiness. So these were known as the utilitarianism, and they were in favor of Oriental or the vernacular education, the Indian languages they wanted to give importance to. Then the last is about liberalism, and liberalism, what does it mean? It was also the ideal which was spread by the French Revolution, and it means individual freedom. And this liberalism actually at that time was propagated by Thomas Babington Macaulay. And he said that the proactive and the enterprising rule of the British was very important for the well-development of the Indians. So he gave importance to liberalism, and he was the person who gave importance to spread of Western education, because there was controversy in India as to what sort of education should be introduced, whether Western education or Orientalist education, Indian education was to be introduced. And at that time, the final decision was given by this person, Thomas Babington Macaulay, along with Lord William Bentinck, in order to introduce Western education. That is why today we are taking the benefit of Western education. So these all are the very important things about the third chapter, and with this I will end my class. And what I would like to say is just a short thing, and that is that we need to be extra careful now, because the migrant workers are all moving in different parts of India. They might be the carriers, so you can't say anything, so we have to be extra careful. So with this I end my class. Thank you so much, students. Thank you.